Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If it feels like that we haven't been here in over a month, it's because we haven't been here in over a month. This is episode 82 of the Friday Night Movie Club, and I'm joined here tonight by my good buddy, Mr. Rob Motto. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Pretty good. I just watched the Braves win in spectacular fashion, so I'm doing pretty good.
Travis Denard was a guy who I believe was almost cut after they won the World Series, and I think they retained him after his performance there. Then, like I said, his first 3 home runs of the season all came tonight, and a monster win against the defending champ. So,
yeah, and then Michael Harris hit a home run, which gave him the opportunity for a 4th at bat. He couldn't do anything with it. So, apparently, and again, I don't know baseball that well, but only like a few select people have hit 4 home runs in a game. It's an incredibly rare thing.
Yeah,
much less 2 or 3. So,
for 4 home runs in a game is the record, and that's been matched a few times. I can't name like every single person who's ever done it, but no one's ever hit more than 4 in a game. And the home run cycle has also never been done in Major League Baseball before, where you hit a grand slam, a 3-1, a 2-1, and a solo home run all in the same game. So those are just 2 feats that we still haven't completed yet. So, yep. So we're live here on YouTube, we're live on Rumble, and we're live on X here tonight. So I know but good buddy Keith is joining us on the Rumble side of things. Spencer is already here on the YouTube side of things as well, saying fuck the Heat. Yeah, the Heat just beat, what was it, the Bulls tonight. So yeah, the Bulls are completely out of it. I mean, the Bulls are not very good. I don't know why you're surprised by that. They stink. But song you'll do it. Yeah, exactly.
I can't even follow the NBA playoffs anymore. I couldn't tell you how the play-in tournament works. Because that's apparently what the game was. Because I think the Bulls won. Here's what I understand. I thought the Bulls won the other night, so they're up 1-0. So why did they get eliminated if they'd only lost their first game in the series? You know what I mean? Like, I'm completely out of it.
So here's how
everybody knows the answer, and that's fine. But
this is how they do it now, and this is all just a money-making scene. They're trying to figure out how they can make more money off of these stupid games. So the play-in tournament, you get the 7th and the 8th seed to play a game. The winner becomes the 7th seed in the NBA playoffs. The loser of that game plays the winner of the 9 versus 10 seed matchup, and then whoever wins that game becomes the 8th seed. So the Bulls beat Atlanta, who I believe was the 10 seed, but then they lost tonight to the Heat, so they're officially eliminated, and the Heat are now the 8th seed.
Okay, there's this scene towards the end of Basketball where like Bob Costas and like Dan Patrick are going through like we're now month 7 of the playoffs. And like explaining like the different like how this team advanced in this regional quarterfinal, and it's like the most inane fucking bullshit. And that movie came out in 1998. So, you know, I mean, it was a little before its time, but it kind of predicted the kind of like okay, sports are going to get to a point where you're not even going to care anymore. It's the rules are going to be that ridiculous, abstract that, it's just not worth it. But
I argue that we're pretty much already there. I mean, this is also the NFL and the NBA have led the charge on this ruining of the sports, where it's like, hey, we're so popular now, we can essentially sell off our individual games as assets and then make even more money like that. So now, like, the NFL does like the Thursday night game, the Saturday night game, the Sunday night game, and then the Monday night game, and then the games in between there. Then they're selling off like playoff games individually, so like each single network. So you have to watch like 8 networks to watch all the playoff slates in one shot. And the NBA is doing the same thing. They expanded it to a 10-team playoff, even though you could argue the 18 playoff was too much for the NBA alone. But they're doing that, and even Major League Baseball, except the game you watched tonight was an Apple TV exclusive. So even they're selling off their games as well too. So it is all just to raise revenue, given the fact that they can't admit that, well, people aren't exactly into a lot of these sports the way that they were maybe 20 years ago. So we need to raise more money to get people into the seats, and that's exactly what they're doing. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know how it works with baseball. I mean, I know it's a 162 game season. So are we supposed to be alarmed that fans aren't there in April? To me, it's not a big deal because it's like it's the beginning of the season. It's not usually like when teams are even at their best. So like I don't even know how to read into that, but NBA, NL, like I've mostly been focused on professional football for the last decade, just because I've moved further away from the NBA.
It was so stupid. I think it was even like the Chicago White Sox, where it's like, oh my God, there's probably only like 2,000 fans here. It's like, well, yeah, it's April. It's still cold outside, and it's a Thursday. So people are at work. So they can't take off Thursday at 1 p.m. to go sit in 40-degree weather to watch them play the Tigers. It's not going to happen. So I don't know why you guys are figuring out.
I want to go see the Braves play the Orioles next month. But it's in the middle of the week, and there's just no way. I mean, I only live like 90 minutes away from Baltimore, but I can't make it because I work basically until 5:30. So, but you know what I mean. But if it was on the weekend, I would definitely go to that. That's just when the schedule came out and what the timing's like.
Yep. And like I said, I'm trying to find some way to make it back to a Braves game because from where I am, like, it's only about, I would say, 25 minutes away on the interstate, which, I mean, that's 25 minutes away in good traffic. And, Atlanta traffic, it can end up easily being like 40 to 50 minutes, depending on the time of the day, too. But yeah, then of course it's in Marietta, and it's a whole other situation. So I just haven't really made the time to go out there yet. So I don't know. We'll figure something out. And then I know the Dodgers are coming, and I don't really want to see the Dodgers, do I? No, I don't know. I'll figure something else. I'll be wait till the Padres come into town or something like that. I don't want to go see the Dodgers. Dante's also joining us here. Shout out to Dante as well. So yeah, that's kind of the sports update that we have here for tonight. And then there was one other story that I wanted to touch up on here real quick, because I think on the bar room we talked about Alan Richmond, Richardson, I believe his name, and we're probably going to be talking about his movie here tonight. But apparently he made some comments, some very, very stupid comments over the last couple of days that's gotten him a lot of heat. And he recently I guess returned fire to the police station that he had criticized, or just the police in general that he criticized over the course of the last few weeks. So this guy who, like I said, when he was promoting, what was it, Ordinary Angels, was kind of like that Christian movie that came out, was saying a lot of things about, wanting to promote more Christian movies and about his faith, and everyone just like bought into the idea. It's like, oh, he's one of the good guys. He's just like the Chris Pratt. And then come to find out, it's like, no, this guy's like a raging leftist and has been for years. So you guys didn't know that before you adored him, the chosen one, and now it blew up in your face. So he made a statement. I think the fraternal order of the police pretty much condemned him, pretty much saying that just stick to making movies, like you, Mark, you don't know what you're talking about. So then he came back out as he's promoting this film. Come by, like, he's doing all these interviews because he's promoting a film, and he's spending his time attacking the police officers, which is also a great thing to do in your marketing 101. But so this was just real quick. Alan Richardson turned on the National Fraternal Order of police after responding to the Reacher Star insults against saying that cops will get away with murder all the time. So obviously this actor is a big, Black Lives Matter guy. You can see that all over his Instagram feed. He said the original comment he made says that cops get away with murder all the time. The fact that we really can't hold them accountable for their improprieties is really disturbing to me. Richmond previously insulted Christians by supporting Donald Trump earlier this week, saying that Trump is a rapist and a con man, yet the entire Christian church seems to treat him like he's the poster child. Is unreal. I don't understand it. He went on to a few other tangents too about the Catholic Church and some other things that he had to say too. Return of Order actually called him a pampered actor who pretends to be in danger while criticizing the people who are actually getting shot at for reals. So then when he heard this one, he decided to I guess fire back at those people. So Richmond was this his comments, or was this the comments of the officers here? Well, let me drop down here okay, here you go. Oh god, do I have to read all this? Yep, I do. He says this kind of emotionally immature response is the epitome of what concerns me about law enforcement today. If this is how leadership handles a peaceful disagreement, well, it wasn't exactly a peaceful disagreement. You said they get away with murder, so there's a little difference from a peaceful disagreement. What does life look like for those unseen interactions in the street? How does this shape the character of those police officers looking to management? Do you really want the individuals so easily angered who bully like school children to have a gun to protect an untouchable union? I don't. He says, you belittled me for being incapable of demonstrating bravery, but then I believe that's exactly what I've shown. Now he's calling himself a hero because he called out the police, because no one's done that in the last few years. Happily fired multiple shots at me simply because I called for more accountability. Now, you said they get away with murder. That's a little different than just accountability. I said I did this knowing people like you who crave a pat on the back and zero credibility would criticize me, so you're doubling down is what you're doing here. Standing up to the impossibly large institutions take courage. I've never been a fan of blind allegiance, which is dangerous and fertile grounds for fascism, a political perspective I'm averse to. Yeah, we know. It also says that I believe in two troops can be held at the same time. There are many good and brave cops who deserve public gratitude and certainly have mine. Simultaneously, is it true that there are rogue, ill-equipped officers who remind us that we need to have a higher barrier of entry and stricter regulation so the abuse are regulated to the past? Both can be and are true. To only seek praise and ignore this is extremely unwise and endangers those at risk of being ostracized and marginalized, which I was referring to in my Hollywood Reporter article. So now he's saying that he's a voice for the voiceless, just like our good buddy CM Punk over there. To make matters worse, in Florida, that Santa's Nazi state down there, Florida is pursuing these issues by continuing to support guys like Governor DeSantis, who just passed a law making it illegal for any other than the police officer, anyone to other than the police to police themselves, which is obviously not true. This lack of transparency would be laughable if it wasn't so deadly. I'm certain efforts like this will take us further from the world I hope to leave for my children, which is one of extreme prudence and when deciding who I am going to arm and in glass houses for public institutions, especially the ones with the ability to end lives. Thank you for your service, and yes, I do think like that. So he absolutely doubled down on everything that he said there. So this is a great way to essentially spend your week promoting your film that you have coming out this week, arguing about police officers, and that's like the whole takeaway from this film. So there was a lot of people out there who were probably really excited about this film because he was in it and Henry Cavill is in it and a few other named people we'll talk about here throughout the course of the night. But then he goes out there and makes these dumb statements. So like anyone who was interested is probably like, yeah, you know what, I'm probably just gonna sit this one out. And I don't know how much money they actually spent on this movie. It seems like they spent a pretty penny putting this film together. I'll be shocked if they make all that money back. But I'll go ahead and start with you. What is your thoughts? Oh God, I just saw the budget. It was a $60 million movie. What is your thoughts on Alan Richards' comments here?
Yeah, well, hopefully they didn't spend too much on the production budget because, I don't think anybody heard about this movie coming out. So
no,
it was knows?
Maybe $60 million production budget.
Yeah, so maybe it'll work itself out. He never really backed up any of his claims. He kind of said cops get away with murder all the time, and it's like, okay, well, what's all the time? It's like, are there high profile cases that get blown out of proportion by the media, and then it creates division and all? Sure, and like there are bad cops, there are bad shoots, whatever, but a lot of them, the cops are in the clear or in the right,
Yeah.
because there's a criminal running away from them. There's someone trying to attack them. I mean, you look into the context of almost all of these issues, save maybe the Tamir Rice thing, the little kid who got shot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he had a toy gun. But seriously, most of them are justified, events that occur. And it's nobody wants to see people get shot, but these people deal with criminals day in and day out. They deal with the worst people, the dregs of society. So I think they deserve a little bit, just a little bit of a not a break necessarily, but just like I said, foresight, context in the situation, and understanding, and saying, okay, this is not good, but we're going to take our time before we judge what just occurred. So all he's doing is sort of stirring up a bee's nest, kind of creating division and fervor where there really is no, there's no controversy. He's sort of bringing this up to promote himself and to promote his movie. To what end, I don't know, because again, it's engendering himself to Hollywood, and kind of like the sort of prevailing notion among celebrities that cops are bad because they shoot black people. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a simplistic, childlike view of the world. But when you really look at reality, when you look at what criminal, violent criminal statistics are, it's really hard to ignore that at the end of the day, cops have a shitty job. No one likes them. I don't like cops, by the way. You know what I mean? But I realize how incredibly necessary they are. I mean, without them, it would be complete chaos. We saw that in the George Floyd Summer of Love. I mean, complete just chaos. And then the politicians were nowhere to be found. They were like, oh yeah, no, everybody else has to put on a mask, but protesters, the rules don't apply to them.
Yeah, COVID is a super deadly virus that's killing everyone, including your grandmother. But hey, George Floyd died in Minnesota, so COVID can take a little bit of a break. We need to go out there in these streets in the thousands and protest against this injustice here. And this guy is such a mark. Like his whole argument here is like, this is going all the way back to 2020. Now, I get it; it's an election year, so we're going to be kicking up these hornets nests again. But wasn't the last couple of years his own allies in Hollywood, the celebrities, pretty much whining about the fact that the police haven't been as tough as they should have been the last couple of years, because all of a sudden crime in LA skyrocketed, right? So people's cars are getting broken into. There was these people were getting robbed at their homes, and these falling what do they call it? It was something like drive home robberies and stuff like that, where they literally follow you home and then rob you when you get there, and people are getting their stuff broken into, and people are like, oh my god, we need more stricter police activity around here. There was actually celebrities in LA that were trying to get people to vote for the Republican mayor candidate in Los Angeles so that he'd be somewhat slightly tougher on crime. Like, that's where we are now, but I guess those efforts fail, and now we're back to, oh yeah, cops are the bad guys. They're such dicks. Why are we listening to the police officers? They killed Breonna Taylor. She was just sitting in her room minding her own business, and the cops just came on there, boom, 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 bang, bang. Like, this is what they think, right? Because this is what the media has told them to think. And people like Alan have absolutely no context of how the real world actually works outside of his bubble. All he knows is about the stories of Black Lives Matter that he's read on Instagram and on Twitter, and that's how he thinks the world operates. So he thinks in his mind that Breonna Taylor was this poor victim of police brutality, and they had nothing. Like, the woman essentially was the cops are going after her boyfriend, who held himself up in his own apartment, and then she got shot essentially by being in the same room as her. It wasn't like the cops went out of their way to murder this woman. It's like you were basically dating a criminal, a violent criminal at that. And what do you think was going to happen afterward?
No, and I remember that when that was happening. That was like me in the just trolling people nonstop, when it's like, oh well, don't spend time at a known criminal's house. And again, I'm don't date known criminals, but not really. At the end of the day, not really. It's like, that is what happens when you associate with people that are disreputable. Like, you are in danger because you spend time with them, and especially you're being the significant other of somebody like that. It's like, it's not it's not that surprising. Again, environment plays a huge role in crime, in being involved, not involved in crime, but being like impacted by it. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like that's not crazy at all. And people want to be like, it's racist. It's like, no, this is how the criminal justice system works.
I know, but like I said, we're reverting back to 2020 stupidity because we're in another election year. So the only way that these people can win an election is by telling you everything is racist, everything is misogynistic, the cops kill black people, and blah 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 blah. It's like it's the same tired crap that we've already heard, which is why, in all honesty, I'm not even emotionally invested in this next election. It's like, yeah, sure, I guess it'll be great if Trump gets reelected, at least financially, maybe things will get better. But I'm not one of these people that's like, oh well, if Trump doesn't win this, it's probably going to be in the underworld one way or another. So I'm not even looking forward to that in that aspect. But look, these people out there who are so emotionally driven by just this absolute drivel. Look, he's a dumb Hollywood jock. That's really what it comes down to. Like, he doesn't really know what he's doing. We mentioned this on Tuesday. Actors are not very smart. They're just not. Most of these guys are like high school dropouts who got englamored with the idea of Hollywood because, oh, it's all about, getting money and getting women and becoming famous and having a nice house and a nice car. And maybe one day I worship Satan. And that's pretty much what Hollywood is in a nutshell. And so don't take your political or any kind of educational advice from paid actors who are basically just paid stooges at the end of the day.
And you know why none of that works on me? The whole like, this is racist, this is sexist, this is homophobic, whatever.
Because you heard it so much?
Well, true, but I know this from when I was a kid to when I was a teenager to when I was a young man to now, and it's been true my whole life, okay? And it's this. Most people are fucking stupid, okay? And so they'll use whatever they can to justify their own selfish, narcissistic behavior. They've done it my entire life. And the last 15 or so years, it's all been, it's been race, it's been, about sex, it's been about gender, it's been about all this shit. And it's like, no, you're just an idiot. And you want to feel important and you want to feel like you have something going for you. But no, you're just a fucking idiot. And that really is most people in a nutshell. And yeah. I realize that may sound negative. It's not. It's not. Most people are unbelievably selfishly driven. And that's like, whatever. We live in America. So it's to be expected on some level. But it's like all of this stuff. It's like, no, there are just stupid people. And it doesn't matter what race or sex or gender or even who you sleep with. They're just, most people are fucking dumb. And that's the whole thing. Like you can talk about race ad nauseum all you want. And look, maybe some interesting conversations can come out of that. But at the end of the day, it's like, look, we're led, our politicians are idiots. The people who vote for them are idiots. And we all kind of have to just tolerate it and not kill each other. That's literally what I feel like life in America is at this point. So yeah, that's it. People are dumb, and that's why you want to cry, complain, whine about X. It's like, okay, you're probably over exaggerating it for attention.
I mean, look, dude, we just had a dude earlier today who set himself on fire and then wrote a manifesto complaining about Bitcoin. Like, that's where we are right now. So, you did all that for Bitcoin? Like, really?
I would rather, you know what I mean? Like, do so many other things than light myself on fire. Like, as depressed as I might be, you know what I'm saying? There are so many sandwiches I have not tried. You know what I mean? Like, even if that's my only goal until I die, that I at least have to live for that. So I don't understand how, how out of your mind you would have to be to say, hey, my life has no purpose or meaning. Let me just light myself on fire to get attention.
I personally blame Rage Against the Machine because they kind of popularized. Wasn't one of their albums have the what was it, the Buddhist monk light himself on fire? And it was like, yeah, we have to understand that, even that guy was an idiot too. It's like, it shouldn't be like looked at as something noble. It's like, oh, I lit myself on fire at a protest. It's like, no, you died.
Well,
now you're down.
And I'm sure it predates this, but I know the cultural significance that has. Monks used to light themselves on fire to protest Vietnam. And there was at least a sense that it was noble because they were giving up their lives to be a symbol of peace, even if it was destroying themselves. It's that like sort of Eastern contradictory nature or whatever. But that's where I think it comes from, or at least a big part. But today it's just like you're not like people doing that for Israel and Palestine, or because there's some Bitcoin conspiracy that isn't even proven. It's like, you people really are fucking crazy, where it's just like, you think you're going to be some symbol or some hero. And then you see memes of that guy who killed himself over the Israeli-Palestine thing. Like, they're misgendering him. Like, you've literally become a joke after your death, after you thought you were giving up some great sacrifice. It's like, none of these people care about you. You did this for some, like, place in this collective of people who don't give a shit about you. It makes no sense.
Some kind of self-congratulatory, well, they'll remember me after I do this. It's like, maybe not in the way that you think that they will, because literally one of the first, I probably shouldn't laugh at this, but it's just in the context. I was just like, come on, guys. Somebody asked the guy who lit himself on fire, it's like, is he okay? It's like, no, he's not okay. He just lit himself on fire. He's not going to be okay for quite a while. Let's be honest here. Even if he somehow manages to survive, it's like, dude, stop. So yeah, that's our rant today. Hollywood actors are dumb, and don't let yourself on fire because Bitcoin went to $60,000. Like, it's not worth it. Imagine how much easier our lives would have been if we had just bought Bitcoin in like 2010 and then just held on to it. Like, we wouldn't even have to have worked anymore. Like,
yeah, I always thought it was a scam. I still kind of think it's a scam, but yeah, no, if you bought
it's a
Bitcoin
scam
back
that
in the
hasn't.
day,
It's a scam that hasn't bottomed out yet. So
yeah.
There you go. So, well, let's go ahead and talk about our first movie of the day. And I'm the one who watched this film, so I know a lot more context here. So I'll kind of explain this to you the best way that I can. So obviously, we've talked about this quite a few times over the last few months, but our new favorite actress in the whole wide world, Melissa Barrera, who is the lead actress of the super woke and super stupid Scream movies that have come out over the last couple of years. She basically got herself into trouble last year because when the whole Israel-Palestine thing was jumping off, she aggressively chose the side of Palestine to the point where she basically likened the Israeli government to Nazis who were committing genocide. And obviously in Hollywood, that is controlled by a lot of Jewish people who support Israel, that did not go over very well. So she ended up losing her job there in the Scream franchise. I would say that she hasn't officially been blacklisted yet, because I mean, she's still kind of around, but who knows where her career goes after this. So Hollywood was definitely getting ready to strap a rocket to her because she checks all the right check boxes up until a point, but she ended up being too woke for her own good. So now she's kind of in limbo at the moment. But this film was already in the can by the time they finished this one. It's a film called Abigail. And you have the same directors and the same writers who are from the previous Scream movies. I know they worked on Scream 5. I'm not sure what their relations with Scream 6. I didn't look into that one to I guess, clarify. But they were part of the Scream movies as well. And then they had this actress. So the entire time, they're struggling to find a way to promote this movie while not having to talk about the fact that their lead actress in this film, who they've worked with over the last several years, just got fired because she made a no-no comment about the Jews over the course of the last several months. So it was very hilarious watching them attempt to put this movie together. But this film has a lot of known faces here. Our good girl, Catherine Newton, who you guys may remember from the film. Lisa Frankenstein is also in this movie. So she's obviously has it all but up to go based on what she did in that last movie, because that last movie was absolute garbage. I don't know what to tell you there. Dan Stevens is in this movie as well. Kevin Durant is in this film. So there's some noticeable people. The other piece of controversy here was what's his name? Angus Cloud, who some of you guys may remember, who was in the show Euphoria last year. He literally died, I'm not even joking, like days after completing his scenes for this movie. So, and it's very, very weird when you watch this movie, because in the context of this film, he's basically playing like a drugged out like wigger who's like like doesn't really like do much, but that's kind of like his whole personality. So you have to question, given the context here, whether he was actually acting in this film or not. I don't think he was, to be completely honest with you. But that's he, like I said, he got popular on that show. He did a few things in between there, and then like I said, last year he ended up overdosing. He had like multiple drugs in his system, which pretty much contributed to his death. So it's not exactly the best way that you want to go into this film to promote this movie. And I'm kind of surprised. This movie has a budget of almost $30 million. And I just thought to myself, like, is the whole point of doing horror is that it's cheap? It's like, well, why, are we going to the point where we're going to start doing like expensive horror movies now? It doesn't defeat the entire purpose of, hey, we can just do a movie for like $5 to $10 million and basically just make our money back overnight, because like there's no risk to these films. But apparently they're not doing that here. So the concept of this film, for those of you guys who haven't seen it, is you have 6 people who kidnap a 12-year-old girl, and they're told that, you know, hey, this girl's father is rich, so if you kidnap her and hold her here for 24 hours, you're all going to get paid about $7 million each when the night is up. So they go to this big giant mansion and kind of like lock the girl in like her room, and their whole job for the rest of the night is just to make sure nobody comes in and tries to give the girl back. So they're basically laying out like a kind of a fort around this whole home, thinking that their invaders are going to be coming from inside. Well, all of a sudden, these people start getting picked off one by one, and very, very violently. So they start realizing, this doesn't look right. Well, come to find out that the 12-year-old girl they thought they kidnapped is actually a ballerina vampire, and that she led them there under false pretenses so she can kill all of them because daddy doesn't love her enough. And that's quite literally the concept of the film. So her dad is also a vampire, but because her dad doesn't really care about her too much, she goes around killing his enemies in order to get her father's attention, but even that doesn't work.
So I heard actually she's supposed to be Dracula's daughter. Did you pick up on any of that, or
it wasn't
in the movie?
So she obviously the father of like another big vampire. I don't know if it was specifically laid up to Dracula, but there was kind of a reference there that, you know, yeah, these two go back quite a long time. Like there's obviously like statues and like pictures there like all around the place. So they were alluding to it. Maybe I just didn't pick up on it, but yeah, that's kind of the concept here. And like I said, you have a bunch of people in this movie, and they all just slowly die one by one. So in the concept of the film, you have Melissa playing the character of Joey, who's like an ex-junkie who's trying to earn enough money to, I guess, go back to her kid because, you know, she got arrested years ago. It didn't go well, had a falling out with her son. Then you have Dan Stevens, who's like a dirty cop who's tried to work his way into the crime family, but then he got rejected. So now he's like doing this as like a FU to the crime family and the old police force as well. You have who else is Will Catlett, who's in the film, who's basically the black guy who dies second. Like that's pretty much his entire like, you know, personality in this film. Catherine Newton plays the rich girl who basically is all about cybercrime because she thinks that it's better than doing actual crime. And then Kevin Darlin's just there to be the biggest guy in the room. So that's pretty much it. And then obviously I said Angus Cloud, he's the I guess the wigger pothead dude who's in the film too. So you get all these like personalities here, you put them in the movie, and it's like, okay, you guys are trapped in a room with a 12-year-old vampire, good luck. And that's the concept of the film. Now, in all honesty, this is not a bad movie for the good first 2/3 of the movie. I actually really enjoyed it because I think the biggest difference between what you see in this film versus what you see with the Scream movies is that in the Scream movies, this is already established franchise. You got to work in already established characters. And it's very, very clear that what they were trying to do with those Scream movies were to push out the older cast in order to prop up, you know, this newer, more diverse cast of Scream. What they were trying to do with the films until, you know, people started popping off about, you know, Palestine and Israel. And then that whole thing fell apart. But in this film, because it's not a previously established franchise, they kind of have the freedom to just go out there and just like make ideas work. So they have like these characters, even though they're kind of thinly veiled, they have good dialogue with one another, they have good chemistry with one another. Like Melissa Barrera and Catherine Newton in this film, like they're not bad actresses. Like I think I mentioned this one with you earlier this week. Like you haven't seen anything good that she's been in, because I mean you're probably only been exposed to her in the Scream movies, which are awful objectively, but I saw her in the film last year called All the World is Sleeping. That was actually a really, really good film. But like I said, it's a film that literally nobody watched because nobody even knew like it was a movie. It was like one of those indie films that kind of just came and went. So if you didn't see it at that time, you wouldn't know, not know or anything else. But she was actually really good in that movie, kind of playing a similar character that she's playing here. And Catherine Newton, I don't know what it is with her, but she has like this weird spunky type of character like to her. It's like I think she's like an only child too, so she definitely has like only child syndrome. You guys know what I'm talking about there. So but she has a great personality that works on screen. A lot of the other characters here work very well too. And like I said, it's basically just a movie about a little vampire girl that goes around killing everyone. So there really isn't nothing not to like about this film for the most few point. Like by the time I was like 2/3 into the movie, like this could be like a very strong 4 out of 5 film for me. I think where the film slips up and where we'll get to the final act of the movie, and I think at this point the film really copped out of its premise here, because like I said, this girl is shown throughout the entire course of the movie to be like the living embodiment of evil, right? Like she doesn't care about anyone. She just goes around killing and murdering and ripping out people's heads and drinking all their blood, like absolute monster, right? But then they tried to like levy a little bit of sympathy towards her towards the end, because apparently one of the guys who's in the group, and if you guys listen to the description, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. He kind of turns heel and he becomes like the main bad guy in like the third act for like just kind of like random reasons, which is like you're kind of copping out of your presence of, hey, look, there's a vampire girl that we need to kill and she's the bad one here, but now we have to shift the focus to the only other white guy who's still alive at this point, and then make him be the bad guy, so that Melissa's character and her character teams up to go against him, and the whole premise kind of loses itself at this point. I think if they had just went all in on, look, I know it may not be apropos, but look, it's a 12-year-old vampire girl. I think you can get away with violently murdering a 12-year-old vampire girl in that context, and people will be okay with it. But they didn't want to do that, so it's like, how can we like wiggle out of this premise that we set up here? And then it's like, by the time we got to the ending, it was like, well, that was a cheap way that it ended. I think you could have done it a lot better, and had they done it a lot better, it would have been a much better movie. But overall, there was still a lot to like about this film, a lot that was very, very solid. I gave this film a 3.5 out of 5. I think it was a solid 3.5 out of 5. Outside of that ending, it could have been so much better, but I really enjoyed it up to that point. So I can't sit here and say that all of it was bad, but yeah, the ending's like, oh, come on, you guys were clearly trying to go in the right direction. You just go in with your premise. Like if you're gonna start at this junction, go all in and don't be afraid of any backlash. But and then,
yeah. That sounds disappointing. I actually want to watch it just because doesn't sound like it's a bad movie at all.
Like I said, it's really not a bad movie. It's just that the ending is going to leave people a little disappointed. The way that they put things together. The context here is kind of like in pro wrestling, where you like overbook a finish, where it's like everyone in the world comes in at the last minute to like interfere into the match when it's supposed to be about 2 guys, and now it's just a complete clusterfuck. That's pretty much what they do with the ending of this film. So that kind of took away from where they were going. But up to that point, I think it was a very entertaining movie. And look, maybe it's the fact that we haven't seen too many entertaining films so far this year, but this one definitely worked out. It definitely favored better than some of the other movies that we watched here in the course of the week. And I was pleasantly surprised that this is easily the best movie that you're going to see this weekend compared to some of the other movies that we're going to talk about here. But I did want to leave it time in case you want to ask any other questions about this film here, because you obviously didn't see it, so I'm giving kind of the straightforward review of this movie.
Yeah, so was this rated R or was this PG-13?
Oh, this is a hard R. So there's going to be a lot of blood and a lot of gore in this movie if you're going to go see it.
That's what I don't understand is, like, if you're going to make that kind of movie, or if you're going to make a monster, I'm assuming the character's name's Abigail, the little girl.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you should go all in with it. You know what I mean? The whole like cop out or making her kind of a protagonist or good guy towards the end just seems, I mean, I haven't seen it, so it's hard to judge it, but yeah, I would have preferred if they just actually went there.
Yeah, like I said, like throughout like 2/3 of the movie, like the little girl, like here is in the context, it's like, look, everyone in this movie is kind of a bad guy in their own right? Because even she calls him out on it at one point in the movie. It's like, so before you guys realized I was a vampire, you had no problem kidnapping a 12-year-old girl for money, right? Kind of called all of them out. It's like, yeah, you guys are just as big as dirtbags as I am, so I'm trying to pretend like you're any better than me, because you're not, right? And I thought that was a pretty clever moment, but at the same time, it's like the emphasis is like, okay, even though these people are bad, it's like she's like literally evil. Like there's no redeeming quality like about her, right? But then they try to like shoehorn shoehorn like this element into like, oh, I did this all because my vampire daddy doesn't, pay enough attention to me, and I tried to murder all of his enemies, hoping that he would love me, but he doesn't love me. And like at this point, it's like you kind of ripped the throat out of like 3 people at this point. Really don't care about your relationship with your dad, who are both evil. So I think it was like her and like trying to find a way to have Melissa's character try to win at the end too, because it's like you always have that one character that survives, I guess, before, unless you want to do an ending which is everyone dies, which might have been better in this case. But
final girl. Yeah,
exactly, right. So everything you built up in that first 2.5, you basically threw it all away at the very last moment, because now all of a sudden it's like, well, now this guy is like the real bad guy. We have to focus all of our energy on him. And then like you're kind of manipulating your audience into rooting for the vampire girl who you've just shown throughout the course of the first 2/3 of this movie is like the most evil character here. So it's like, so are we supposed to be cheering for her now? Like, are we supposed to be sympathetic towards her now because daddy doesn't love her enough? It's like you can't do that type of finish with the setup that you guys had there. Like it felt like you guys just didn't want to come to the conclusion. It's like, hey, look, the only way to pay off what we set up here is that we're gonna have to like violently kill this 12-year-old girl in a satisfying way, but that might not go over well with certain audience, certain test groups. So it's like, how do we move away from this? It's like, well, if you were gonna do that, you had to clean up pretty much everything you set up before that fact too. So
yeah.
And Maurice, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, no. I was just gonna say, with his last move, or with their Ready or Not, I mean, she was kind of the audience was with Samara Weaving's character from the start, as her in-laws are trying to murder her. And here it's like, no matter how bad these people are, and yes, it is not morally good to kidnap a child and hold them for ransom. It is not murder.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I do think that there's a difference, and I'm not saying that's not immoral. It's fucked up to kidnap a child or whatever, but viciously murdering people is a little, it's kind of going over into the evil category.
Yeah, right. Especially considering like some of the people that you kill, it's like you violently murdered like the stoner dude who was just like, okay, he was kind of a dick, but it's like he didn't deserve to have his head like ripped off. Like he wasn't like that evil or like anything like that. There was no there's no real moral ambiguity here. So I don't think that's what you're gonna get out of this film. And Maurice says it here. It's like, so they overbooked the Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns footage. Like pretty much exactly what they do, like to a T with this movie. So
and
like I said, go ahead.
Just real quick, one of my favorite TV shows going is Tales of the Crypt.
Mm-hmm.
Tales from the Crypt, and that formula is basically like nasty people like having their lives end in an incredibly nasty way. And horror movies kind of follow that. This, just listening to it sort of sounds like The House on Haunted Hill, where you have to spend the night to get millions of dollars or something, kind of mixed with a vampire story. So yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like something I would check out when it comes, when it gets available in other locations or on demand, just because it's something to check out. I mean, there's been so few movies this year that even seem like they're worth watching. So this one at least sounds entertaining for the most part.
Like I said, it's been a rough year. Like it really has. Like there hasn't been a whole lot that have really impressed me so far this year. And when I was watching this film up to a point, I was thinking to myself, it's like, oh God, this might be the best movie I've seen so far this year. And that's sad. It's actually sad to say that, but it was there for a moment. It didn't hold on to it, but it was close. But like I said, it's still a good movie. I would still recommend it. Like I said, 3.5 out of 5 for me. Like I said, I think there's only like 3 movies I've actually given a 3.5 or higher to this year. It's like basically that one, Ordinary Angels, and Bookkeeper. So that's kind of the route that we're going here so far this year. So like I said, go watch the good movies while you can, because there's not a whole lot out, at least in this market. So yeah, that's my review of Abigail. So that's what we got going there. I think the other movie we were supposed to do this week was The Rebel Moon 2, but I was like, you know what? Rick's not going to be here. He chickened out. So it's like, I'm not going to make you suffer for 2 hours and watching the terrible Zack Snyder movie. Unless you really, really want to. But yeah, I was like, nah, we'll skip that one. And apparently, from what I heard, it's even worse than the last one. And I think I stopped watching the first one because I was so bored. So I haven't even gone back and finished the first one yet. So I only imagine how bad the second one is.
Yeah, and really it would be 5 hours because I would have to watch part 1, which I never saw. So
Yeah.
it would just be, yeah, that's a lot. And again, I haven't seen 1 minute of screen time, but it just seems like Zack Snyder wanted to make his own Star Wars thing, which, it's fine, but like the fact that Star Wars hit, you know what I mean? It was a sort of like 1 in a billion sort of thing, 1 in a billion sort of like phenomena. And so it's really hard to take that same thing and try to duplicate it again and again. I mean, the MCU kind of did it in their own way, you know what I mean? But that was pretty different, and it was also like 25 to 30 years after Star Wars was this cultural phenomenon too, because the prequels never really recaptured that kind of energy or mania. So
I agree. So, yep, there's our review of Abigail. So, with that being said, we can hop over to our second movie of the night, which is The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So, obviously, we talked a little bit about this with one of the stars in this film, Alan, what's his name? Richardson is his name. So, we talked
Jack
about
Reacher,
him going.
yeah.
Jack Reacher, right? And we'll talk about him throughout the course of this film too. But so it's interesting because with Guy Ritchie, like I've actually enjoyed a lot of Guy Ritchie's content here over the last few years. I think he's done a good job turning things around. Like there was a time there where he was very much hit or miss, and then when he like misses, like he really misses, like King Arthur was like just absolutely awful. I don't know who sat through that one, but he's been doing some really good stuff here. Like Wrath of Man, I think we both agree was a very good movie in 2019, and that was a great year for films. I love The Gentleman. I'm not sure how you felt about The Gentleman as a series, but that was a film that they just did a Netflix series based on that too, and I think he may have been involved in that one as too. I just saw the Netflix series. It's basically kind of like it plays in the same universe of that film, but it's actually done pretty well. So and that one was pretty good. And then what was the last one? Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. I think we both enjoyed. I think we disagreed like how the third act of that film it kind of dragged on a little bit, but he's done some good stuff here. I think the problem with this one, and this is something that I pointed out, like after you did your review, is that you watch this and Guy Ritchie directed this film, but he really didn't write this movie. This movie has 4 screenwriters, so he's only like one of 4. And I think this is kind of the primary problem with this film is that even though this is a Guy Ritchie movie and it has a little bit of his aesthetics in the film, this doesn't really feel like a Guy Ritchie film, and that's probably because his writing influence into the script wasn't really, I guess, to be found here, or wasn't really felt that much. What did you think about the film having like 4 screenwriters? Did you know that going into that one, or did you find out after the fact?
No, I did not know that this movie had 4 screenwriters. But let me just put it this way: you can tell. It's like if you're told that and then you watch the movie, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, like what do we call this in the culinary world? You say it is having too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's like you have way too many narratives going on here, and the biggest problem with this film is just the fact that it is completely unfocused as a movie. Like this is a film that supposed to so you have a few groups that are going on here because it's telling the story about deep in World War II. By the way, I wanted to bring this one up with you. I'm not sure if you realize this, or I'm not sure if you figured this out over the years, but the Nazis were the bad guys in World War II. Did you ever hear about this? I'm not sure if there's been any movies about this over the last several years that I've talked about this, but the Nazis were actually, in fact, the bad guys. They were not good. So, but once again, we're telling another World War II story, and it's I think in 1940, where the British government realizing that they're kind of down against the war against Nazi Germany, so they're trying to find a way to get an advantage. So they're like, hey, we can infiltrate the Nazi ranks and then sabotage like one of their weapons depot or one of their energy depots. We can get an advantage in the war and really hurt Adolf Hitler's side. So we're gonna get a bunch of guys together. They're gonna be wild and crazy guys, to just put it that way, and not really trustworthy in the intelligence community, but they'll do the job. They'll go out there, and then hopefully we can get an advantage to beat Hitler in the war. But as that's going on, as we're focusing on these group of guys who we're talking about here in a second, there's also an espionage angle to the story as well, where Elsa Gonzalez, who's supposed to be playing a an actress Marjorie Stewart, who I believe was race swapped based on the real life person she was playing here, and we'll get to this here in a second. And then she's playing with a bar owner. They're trying to essentially rub noses with the Nazis to distract them from the deception that's actually going on behind the scenes. Hopefully that, hey, if we just put this pretty actress, in this Nazi guy commander's face, that he won't notice that, hey, we're blowing up his weapons depot behind him in the truck. So that's kind of the concept here. The problem is that you're focusing on you're basically telling three different stories simultaneously. It's Henry Cavill's team, it's the Winston Churchill story, and then it's also these other two who are just like brown nosing around. And at no point in this movie does anything seems like it's focused enough, or that you're watching one like consecutive movie at any point in this film. Do you feel that same way?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly there, but there's nothing okay. But even before you get there, it's not set up well at all. It's just kind of thrown against the wall, and you're just supposed to like accept it. And the characters are paper thin, and it's the premise is ridiculous. And oh, by the way, it is a like 85% ripoff job of Inglorious Bastards. I
Yeah.
mean, down to Hugo Stieglitz being the bad guy, being the Nazi bad guy, and like literally, like I'm sure you'll get to this, but the device of someone not being German, like letting something slip, and it's like you stole this right from Quentin Tarantino's script. So yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you that none of the three events adds up to much or is well put together or designed. It's completely flat. It is complete. And the amount of time where I was like, there's an hour and 15 minutes left in this 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
It dragged so bad, especially from the moment they supposedly leave in the ship to the point that they get to the the island or whatever off of Africa. And it's just like, this is painstaking. This is so the fact that I was counting the minutes was just like, this was so poorly executed. This was so poorly set up that it's not even an entertaining kind of action comedy. It's completely dead on arrival.
Yeah. So let's get into the characters here for a second. This is going to help us put together everything. So Henry Cavill was supposed to be Gus March Phillips in the film, and you can tell throughout the entirety of this film, he's absolutely chewing up the scenery. And I get it, he probably hasn't been able to show this much personality in a lot of his films, especially if you look at his Superman performances over the last few years. So he seems to be going all in on this. I'm not sure if this was a little bit of a push from like Guy Ritchie's direction too, but you have him playing in this film. Alan Richardson, who's the guy we talked about the course of the entire night. Was it just me that he felt like he was completely out of place in this movie? You have to keep in mind, this is supposed to be a World War II centered film, right? But at no point in the movie does he feel like, or he's dressed like he's actually in the World War II age. It's like he's like sitting there like this big giant, like 240-pound, like pro wrestler body, just wearing like wife beaters and like jeans the entire time. I'm thinking to myself, everyone else is in like old costumes. You got like the silly hairstyles and stuff like that. And he just looked like he just walked off of the scene from like another movie. Like at no point did he ever felt like he gelled with the timepiece that this film was supposed to be in. Did you feel that way about him too?
Yeah, I still don't really understand what his character's was for, other than like his whole thing is like, I kill Nazis. I'm so good at killing Nazis, and I talk a funny accent, and make gay innuendo jokes with my with Henry Golding, which I found out it was Henry Golding, as like the Asian guy that's on board. So I think that he mentions his character is gay. I again, I don't know what this has to do with the story or his character development, but I think I believe that was thrown in there. And it's like, yeah, his character makes no sense. He uses a bow and arrow, and creatively dispatches like Nazis, but that's literally all he's known for. I think he's supposed to be Swedish, or the boat he pretends to be Swedish because it's a Swedish boat. Because if the English discover them, they're going to jail. If the Germans discover them, torture and death. And so it's just, like, the whole thing is set up by Churchill. The whole thing is just like, oh, we have to convince the Americans all of this is part of stopping Germany's U-boat production
Yeah.
because England can't get supplies to the homeland. Germany keeps blocking them, blowing up their ships. And so it's just like part of this though is to convince Americans to get involved, but it's prior to Pearl Harbor. Like a lot of this shit just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work, and it's on top of it, it's incredibly idiotic. Like that's what I mean. Like Operation Fortune, I know you didn't really like that movie. That was another Guy Ritchie action comedy that came out last year. That to me, that was so much better done what they decided to do here. And maybe it comes down to the screenplay because even talking about Henry Cavill, he had no dialogue. Like he might have been like chewing up the scenery. It's because he had nothing else to do. He was given like little quippy like one-liners and retorts, but he had almost no dialogue. His entire character is built into his twirly, twisty mustache that it's like late 1800s or whatever, highly stylized mustache. That's literally his character. Apparently he was supposed to be Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote James Bond. You know what I mean? And this is supposed to be, this was just, they were spinning their wheels for 2 hours. It was one of the most exhausting theater watches of 2024 in a year where we've had, Argyle, Drive Away Dolls, Lisa Frankenstein. So I was amazed how bad this movie was, honestly.
Yeah, and like I said, it felt like he was basically just acting, like I said, kind of out of emotion and kind of out of the quips, because there wasn't a whole lot going for him here. And I thought about this too. It's like, compare this one to the Abigail movie, which is obviously a horror movie about a Vampire and a vampire. And that film, I think they're roughly about the same like runtime. Like that one, this one was about 2 hours. This one's like a little bit under 2 hours. And like when the horror film is better paced than your action movie, that's usually not a good sign, like at all. And I remember like going there pretty early and thinking to myself, like, wow, like this, I have like, there's nothing that's keeping me from paying attention like to this film. And I think that when you look at Henry Cavill's like career, it's like he's in a whole bunch of like stuff, but he's not in anything that ever like sets him apart. Like I don't know, it's almost like the same thing with like Chris Hemsworth. Like he almost intentionally picks bad movies to be in, and then when you see him in like one, like when you see like what's his name, Chris Hemsworth in like the first Extraction movie, you think, oh wow, this is actually great. Like I've actually seen him in something that I really enjoy. He should be in more movies like this. And then he goes back to doing like Men in Black 4 or some nonsense like this. It's like, okay, this is why I don't like the guy in the first place. It's like he has the capability of doing better films than he does, but for whatever reason, he's just picking just other shit, just one after another, and this is the same thing that we get here. And then, of course, we got to get to our good buddy, what's his name? Elsa Gonzalez here, who's supposed to be playing the half Jewish, I guess you could say, entertainer actress here. I know what you're going to say. I'll let you go here for a second. At no point in this movie am I buying into this storyline that somehow she's a secret Jew who has to hide her true identity. It's like, but come on, who are we kidding here in this movie? Are you serious?
I want to say there are a few outfits she puts on this. She looks great. She's half naked. Two scenes where she's just wearing these amazing dresses, and it's great. Every time she opens her mouth, I want to tear my ears off, because the banter that she has with the guy from Inglourious Basterds who played Hugo Stiglitz, is so bad. Their dialogue, their back and forth tete-a-tete, and like the limericks that they come up, it is like, this shit is so fucking bad. It's so poorly written, so poorly executed in what these characters would say to each other. And like this Nazi weirdo is trying to lure her so he can torture her to death. And it's made that like he has this tendency to doing this to women, and, don't be alone with him and at one of his parties. And anyway, just all of their scenes together, the seduction, I don't believe any of it. I don't believe anything that comes out of that woman's mouth. Her accent is terrible. And again, I don't want to be too mean, because she was in that movie Ambulance, Michael Bay's, which I thought she was actually pretty good in that. And I think she was in Baby Driver back in the day.
Yeah.
But so
this is what I was gonna call out just real quick too, because it's like, those are the only two movies that I've seen her in where she was anywhat tolerable to me. Like she's been in a whole bunch of other movies and she just hasn't been good in like any of them. Like she was in Alita Battle Angel, didn't care for her in that movie. I didn't care for her in Hobbs and Shaw. The Vin Diesel movie was Bloodshot. Didn't care for her in that one. She was in the last like Godzilla Kong movie, and then I guess she was in there for like 5 minutes before she died. It's like she hasn't really been in a lot of like good films that I've seen. So it's like, is there like a couch situation going on here? It's like, why is she like in like every other film that I watch like the course of the last few years? Because she hasn't really had like a standout performance in either of them. Like you could probably argue maybe Baby Driver's her best performance so far. That's not saying a whole lot.
Yeah, and so in this, again, she's, you know, she's done no favors. She doesn't have much of a character. The dialogue is awful. I mean, we spend so much time with her and this guy who runs this bar as these undercover people, and they've got nothing going on. I mean, the as bad as the scenes on the ship are, where they're just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting and wait. These are awful, awful scenes to watch, and just they drag the movie down to a point where, again, I had an hour, 45 minutes left. And I'm like, can I walk out? I can probably walk out and just read the synopsis on Wikipedia, right? But I didn't. Yeah. I stayed. I watched it, and it was just a completely dead movie. And again, I think the opening is okay. The initial surprise attack on the Nazis who board their ship and stuff, and then they do the flashback to the beginning of the mission. Get it together and everything. I thought that was okay. It was fine. But then after that, it just took an absolute nosedive.
Well, a couple things before we get to the ending, because I was kind of the opposite way, how it really took me almost till the third act before I actually started investing myself in this movie like at all. But we trickle back over here to like this scene. I had to think to myself, okay, like is this historically accurate, or we're just kind of like shoehorning a lot of like diversity, equity, and inclusion scene? Because obviously we're talking about the scene here where they have to get the weapons from the African guys because they have like all the guns, like quite literally have all the guns in this movie. So this is what they use for their final, I guess you could say, mission here in Germany to take care of these guys. But I didn't really care much for any like this whole like plot line. I just felt like with him, Gonzalez, you could have probably just removed them out of the film altogether. If we had just focused on Henry Cavill's group throughout the entire movie, maybe this would have been a much better film. But like I said, you essentially have 4 writers that are trying to write 3 different narratives at the same time with 3 different groups, and none of it is gelling together well at all. It almost feels like if he just stripped it down and focused on one group and told a story based on them, maybe cut a little bit of the runtime out of this movie, you would have had a much better film than what you were going for here. But this just felt like an absolute mess from start to finish here, and there was a lot of characters here that I just generally just didn't care about. The whole thing with Cavill stealing the Nazis guys' uniform and then wearing it throughout the whole thing. It's like, okay, I get it. That's good for like a gag, but like to just keep going back to it throughout the course of the film, I just felt like that was completely unnecessary here.
Oh, I have to get one of those coats thing. It's it's Nazis and fascists like to dress well. I don't get it.
But they have such great designer clothes. It's like the one thing, the only thing we'll ever give the Nazis credit for is like, hey, they dress really well. It's like, yeah, they may have been fascists targeting Jews and taking over Europe, but they knew how to dress, those Nazis back then, those days. So when we get to this part of the film, this is the only thing that really picked up my attention. It's probably like the last like 20-25 minutes when we're actually getting to the mission that we've been building up here for almost 2 hours, and they're going in and they're hijacking the boat and they're killing like all the Nazis that are on the boat. Then they're trying to make their big escape, like the whole actual mission. This part was actually pretty like engaging. Like, it felt like it was like, okay, now I'm finally somewhat invested in this movie after sitting through it up to this point. Like I said, if I had left earlier, it probably would have been a much lower score. If I had just like given up, like probably the same point you had. But when I got to this point, it's like, okay, why couldn't the film been more like this? Like, if you're going to do an Inglourious Basterds ripoff, why don't you actually like do it well rather than having to sit through a whole lot of filler and just like pointless dialogue to like storylines that goes anywhere? It's like, this is kind of your bread and butter. And it's like, if you kind of stuck to this formula, you could have had a much better movie here, but of course you didn't. So like for this film, maybe I'll say just watch the last 20 minutes of it, and then maybe you have a much better experience with this film than we did. But that's kind of what I was thinking there. What did you think at least about the ending of this movie? Did at least save a little bit for you, or we just kind of tuned out at that point?
I mean, I was pretty tuned out. But I will say, for a movie that sells itself that it's so bloody and so violent, I mean, so many of those scenes are just kind of like, the word I use to describe Marvel a lot is airless. Meaning you don't feel it. You don't. They're not impactful scenes. It's not. It doesn't add up to a whole lot. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Like, one scene that really bothers me though is on the train when the German officer literally is like, "I have to carry your luggage for you because I'm being chivalrous." And black gentleman, literally the black guy does it for her. And hold on. So we're gonna say that this is totally fucking normal. I mean, I know they're in Africa technically, so like maybe it's somewhat understandable, but it's like you're gonna let this black dude show you up as being a gentleman after you like called out the lady handling her own luggage. Shit like that just is like, why is this in here?
Like I said, it's this weird thing, right? Because it's like they're trying to focus on the Nazis. Well, we have to really sell it. They really hate the Jew, right? That's what the kind of the selling point. It's like, well, yeah, they also didn't like a lot of other groups as well, too. But in the context of this film, you're showing these groups, like I said, you're trying to match up to your diversity and inclusion check marks. Like I said, the reason why Alan's character was revealed as gay throughout the course of the movie, they did that solely so that when GLAAD does their studio responsibility index at the end of the year, they can see like, oh, this movie had a gay character in it. He was prominently in the film. It's like it played no bearing to the actual story, like whatsoever. It's like there was no lover, there was no indication of anything. We just had, this is our way to establish that this is a gay character so we can move on with the rest of the movie. Like, this is how they get away with it now. And like I said, in this film, you have all of these diverse characters interacting with the Nazis, Nazi Germany during the heart of World War II. And it's almost like this elephant in the room that no one's talking about here. Because, yeah, if this was true to the storyline, there'll be a lot of racist stuff being thrown around here. Not only just at the black guy, but let's be honest, at Gonzalez too. Because, yeah, maybe she could have convinced people that she wasn't a Jew, but she's clearly Hispanic. So she even in that aspect, she doesn't fit the master race's build. So it's like, what are we really doing here with like this movie? Are you trying to be diverse for a World War II movie, but then obviously not mention any of the historical let's say conflicts that would have arose for having this many black people and this many Hispanics interaction with Nazis during the heart of World War II too? It's like you can't have it both ways. If you're gonna go all in on it, make it a part of the story. You got 4 writers, nobody could figure this out.
And then the Winston Churchill stuff just seemed like, okay. I mean, I know, the whole like, it's an incredibly historic character and figure, and just kind of coming up with this story about, I think it's the SAS, but it's this intelligence agency where I can't admit that this is what's going on, but I'm also the prime minister, and like, just there's a lot of convoluted nonsense that gets thrown into this movie that just doesn't work. So it's kind of a mess all around.
And here's another thing for me. Like, obviously, I'm pretty sure you remember The Darkest Hour, the film that Gary Oldman won an Academy Award for a few years ago. It's like, when I see him playing Winston Churchill, every other person who's tried to play Winston Churchill over the last few years is such a downgrade. It's like, I don't even know why you even put him in the film at that point. It's like, I get it, he's an important figure historically, but if you're not going to match that performance, everything's going to look like a step down right out of the gate. So I don't know why you would set yourself up like that if you couldn't deliver on at least a somewhat decent Churchill representation in the film.
We've been taking Glorious Bastards. I mean, Tarantino knew enough to basically have Churchill on the screen for 95 minutes, basically to, bring up the case or the mission, being in the room when Mike Myers is telling Michael Fassbender about it. And they all have that same like high status officer accent. It's just like, we get it. You're from a wealthy family and all this shit, and none of the characters felt like individuals. They all felt like caricatures of a certain type of British officer from literally the 1940s, which is okay, but none of the dialogue was funny. You didn't have any kind of development of the characters. It seemed silly. And then you also never developed anything, with that. So That's the worst thing, is that it tried to be a funny kind of shticky action comedy. It wasn't funny, and then the action wasn't engaging. So it really failed, I felt like, on every level. Now, maybe the ending was better than I'm remembering it, but I was just like, okay, can you just end it now? Right when she shoots the Nazi in the head.
Yeah, that was what I was kind of tapping out too, and it's like, she would have gotten killed like several times over the course of the film, but it's like, what does Rick say? If the plot requires it, something would happen. That's what it felt like for the most part of this film too. And my final takeaway on this one: there's too many writers. There's entirely too many characters. The story never gets off the ground. If it wasn't for a pretty decent final act in this film, I probably would have gone a lot lower. But this movie just felt like Guy Ritchie was doing a buddy favor for someone so that he can get good graces when his next project comes out in the next couple of years. So it's like, it's one of those like deals in Hollywood. It's like, well, if you do this film for me, then I'll do this thing for you like in a couple of years. So this is what this movie felt like to me at the end of the day. So like I said, I think I was just going to give it a 2 out of 5. It's not good. It's just overbooked as a movie. Like I said, it's basically the Cody Rhodes Roman Reigns finish for films here. It tries to be all the things without figuring out what it actually is as a movie. So that's probably my biggest sticking point with this film. But what did you think here?
Yeah, no, I'm probably going to come in at the same score, 2 out of 5, because look, Madam Web is technically the worst movie.
Yeah,
I was less annoyed watching Madam Web. So like, but just being real, because I gave Madam Web a 1.5 out of 5. Because it's a bad movie and there's really nothing redeeming about it, but I didn't think it was as terrible as so many people made it out to be. This movie is better. Okay, but it's only marginally better because it's like, yeah, there's a plot and there are characters, but it's non-existent in terms of being interested, being entertained by what you're watching. It's a complete dead on arrival movie. So certainly not the worst of the year. It might make my top 10 worst, but we'll see. We've got a long way to go. But yeah, I'll give it 2 out of 5. I certainly hope for all the people involved, they make better choices. Guy Ritchie, direct what you write. The actors, please pick better projects than something that was obviously doomed from the start. Like Henry Cavill, I don't think is untalented, but the roles aren't there for him. I don't know what to say at this point.
And he's working on this Warhammer 40K or whatever this project is. I'm pretty sure a whole bunch of gaming nerds know a lot more about that than I do, but it's supposed to be like his next big project, and people were supposedly very excited about it, but there's been a lot of bad news about the production of this film, which makes people think that it's probably not going to be as good. So it's like, I don't know what he's doing with his career right now, but it's like, look, you're only going to get that Superman rub for like a couple of more years for people just like eventually start to move on, and you're not exactly giving anyone a reason to want to keep buying into whatever you're doing here with the stuff that you're producing. So he's going to have to make a decision here one way or another. I don't know, maybe we're on the last legs of I guess his career in Hollywood, because there's just not much going else for him right now. And one more thing about this film too that I noted too. Well, I guess it's more about kind of the context of the films that we watched here. This mirrors a lot of what we saw with Godzilla versus Kong, where if like I said, if it wasn't for an over the top like last 20 minutes of the movie, it'd probably be a lot worse than it is. And I think to myself, if I hadn't given those ones a slight bump based on its final third act, it's like, man, you look at the movies that we have here that so far in 2024. I'm looking at my list, dude. Love Lies Bleeding is probably a top 5 movie for me this year, and that's how bad that this film, I mean, this year has been. Like, there just hasn't been like really anything like. I know last year was definitely a lot better because you had like Oppenheimer and a couple other like big movies that really like set itself apart from like everything else. Maybe we'll get a film like that. I'm not gonna get here like crap all over this year, because we do have some good movies that are coming out. We have the Bike Riders movie that's coming out later on this year. That looks pretty good. Maxine, which is essentially the part 3 of the X and Pearl trilogy, that looks pretty good. So there are some movies coming out here that looks like it could turn the tables for them, but man, just what we've been getting like mainstream wise, it is not a good outlook. And then even next week, by the way, not going to do a show next Friday night, and the reason why is because the only new movie that gets released that week is Challengers, which is the Zendaya movie. And like, look, I'm not giving up my Friday night just to watch and cover every Zendaya film. I'm not going to do that. So we'll probably push it back there another week, but. It's just like, man, have we hit a wall here? Have we hit a wall when it comes to Hollywood cinema, just like entertainment? What's kind of your thoughts on kind of our trajectory right now?
Yeah, I don't think it's sustainable in terms of financially, the business aspect of it, because, for, well, I'm not going to say for better, but yeah, for better or worse, to use the phrase, Hollywood decided to go all in with the tentpole intellectual property comic book movie, where they cost $200 million now to produce. They got to make $1 billion before they really make a profit. I mean, maybe 800 million, 900 million, but basically $1 billion. And when that, when that deck of cards started, house of cards started falling, it was like, hey, well, this is not sustainable. Now we fucked ourselves. Because now we're going to be losing so much money that it's, going to be so incredibly hard to come back from. So look, you'll never hear somebody who wants things to go back to the way they used to be. I don't know that world exists anymore, which is like the 90s, where you had the mid-budget adult movie get made for between $60 and $90 million. I mean, go back and you look at some of these movies that got made, and it's like, these were not huge movies in like the culture or anything, but it's like people went to see them. We don't really have that anymore. Maybe it's because Hollywood has stopped making them. I don't know. I hope for the best going forward, but I think eventually, maybe 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, but it's going to collapse the way that we know it, where the studios are, king and throw all their money around. It's like, it's just not going to be there anymore. People are going to stop investing. People are, it's certainly not what it was, and it's not going to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, like I'm desperately trying to like look for, is there anything like down the line here that like is interesting? I said we talked about the Bike Riders movie with Tom Holland, the Tom Hardy and what's his name, Austin Butler. That film's coming out. Like I said, that looks good. The Mia Goth film looks good. And then I'm just looking ahead. It's like, like what is there out there? It's like the Joker 2 movie. Like, I'll just say this: I love the first Joker movie. Obviously, like I gave it a 5 out of 5. It was a strong movie. I'm not excited about this whole let's bring Lady Gaga in and make it a musical. Like, I just don't care. I'm not saying that it won't be a good film, but just based on that premise alone, like I'm not very excited about it. And then like some of the other films that are supposed to be big films, they're doing another Aliens movie. Like again, it's like, okay, why are we doing this again? Or we still have that Furiosa movie that's coming out later on this year. We still have like the Planet of the Apes film. So I mean, look, Bad Boys, what was it? We're at now 4. Bad Boys 4 is coming out this summer, and the trailer looks better than a lot of the movies that are also coming out this summer, and it doesn't even look that good. Like that's kind of how bad that we are. So I just feel like we're in a rough spot here, and I don't know. Maybe we need to find some more indie movies, find some more international stuff, because I haven't really done too many of those type of movies this year too. So maybe there's just been a few other movies that I haven't seen yet. But I mean, man, the mainstream stuff is rough now. It's pretty rough. Well, I'll go ahead and let you guys know too. Like I said, next week we won't be here on Friday night, so I'll let you guys know the next time we do the Friday Night Movie Club. We won't be reviewing a film on the Barroom this week either, because obviously we did the 2 films here tonight, so we'll free up our schedule here. But I'm looking at probably the next film that we'll end up doing might be The Fall Guy. I know that one's coming in May. And then you also have, like I said, Planet of the Apes and a few other movies coming out. So there's a couple of them that we can do. But like I said, we'll probably cover that one on the Barroom podcast, unless something really big comes out. It probably won't be the summer until we really start getting some of these bigger movies. Like I said, there's a few of them coming out this summer that should be fun to look forward to, and hopefully they don't disappoint us. Because if those movies are bad, then we're really in trouble. So I want to go ahead and give you a quick chance to promote anything you got coming up, Rob. I know you got a whole bunch of podcasts that you're working on here. Well, you're on episode. First of all, tell people the name of your show and tell people how many episodes you've done so far.
Yeah. So my podcast is called You're Not Terribly Important to Me. I think I'm up to 7 episodes in like 2 months. Actually, it's probably more than that. I don't know. I'm not very good at getting it out on time or on a regular schedule, but when I have time, I like to do it. I like to talk about, movies, reviews, what's going on in entertainment, occasionally maybe some sports, but I really tried to make it more or less pop culture focused. I'm super behind right now on movie reviews. I need to actually find some time this weekend to get some done, just because, starting a new job and everything has kind of been my excuse. And now I actually need to focus on that. So, but you can find all of my updates for my channel, everything like that. My channel, by the way, is just Rob Motto Movies. It's very simple. It's just like my Twitter. But yeah, all my updates will be over there on my Twitter. If you're on there, just follow me there. And yeah, just keep an eye out. I try to do the Barroom podcast every Tuesday with Jacob and everybody over there. And then just whenever we are reviewing a movie, I like to be a part of that as well on Friday nights. So yep, just look for those updates over on my Twitter.
All right. I'll let you guys know what I got coming up. Tomorrow, I'm going to be recording an episode of the Bible In show. It won't be shown tomorrow. It'll be shown on Sunday at our normal time, but I'm recording with them tomorrow. We're going to talk about kind of the invasion of occultism in WWE with my good buddies TWRP. We're going to see JC and I think we might even have what's her name on next tomorrow as well. But basically, we're going to be talking about essentially our context of WWE and a lot of things that they've been promoting over the last few years. It's stuff that we've really paying attention to, a lot of the overt stuff. So that will be premiering on Sunday at 7 p.m. It won't be a live episode, but it will be a premiere episode, and I will be in the chat to answer some of your questions about this as well. I'm trying to line up some other guests too for some projects we got coming up over the next few weeks. So hopefully we'll get that in order. Tuesday will be the next episode of our Barroom podcast. We do that every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. This Monday, hopefully, we should be back with me and Cider doing the Monday Rewind on Bounding in the Comics, and then I should be back next week for the 01 stream. I wasn't here this week, and they replaced me with Nerd again, so I'm not happy about the fact that they race and gender swapped me for the 1 week that I missed the show. So outside of that, that's kind of the streams that I got coming up here. Hopefully we'll have some other things that I'm working on too. I got a pretty busy lineup here. I got like 8 movies that I need to catch up on myself, and I think 4 of them are South Korean films. So I don't know, maybe when I watch some of these indie movies, it will hopefully revamp my love for films, because like I said, it's just bad right now. Like, I wish we could tell you that things were better out there, but they're not at the moment. So outside of that, go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who joined us here tonight. Keith over on our Rumble side. Shout out to Keith for joining us. We had Spencer, Dante joining us on YouTube, Rooftop Korean, Maurice Johnson, everyone who joined us on the show here tonight. We're going to go ahead and sign off and get out of here. So hopefully I will see you guys Sunday night for that Bible In special. Then we'll see you guys live on Tuesday night for the Barroom podcast. So until then, adios. Thanks for joining us, and we're rolling out of here. Good night, guys.
It's over. Go home.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Okay.
Get out! Get out!
You get the hell out!
Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch.